New Bridge Connect. My name's Paul Farron. We're a South Bronx magazine talking about all things South Bronx. This is our inaugural issue, 2016, and we figured we'd talk about a real hot topic right now in the South Bronx, which is development. Lots of money coming here and lots of fear coming along with that money. People are worried about what that money is going to lead to. We know the story. So I figured we'd sit down and talk to the people who are throwing in the money, Somerset Partners. I reached out to Keith Rubenstein, the founder of Somerset Partners, and he invited me down to their offices in Park Avenue. And we had a conversation about his vision and what's been happening up till now. I hope you enjoy.
My name's Keith Rubenstein, and I'm a principal at Somerset Partners, and we're a real estate investment company. We own and operate various types of real estate in and around different parts of the U.S., including 10,000 guard apartments, mostly in the Southeast, and other commercial buildings, and obviously we know about our properties in the South Bronx. Most is that we're going to build a large-scale development across two sites that will encompass somewhat approximately 1,500 or 1,600 residential units. Okay. But at the same time, listening and reading what people have been asking for many years, which is access to the waterfront. Okay. And right now, the situation in the South Bronx is a lot of very, very viable complaints about asthma rates, about food choices, fresh food choices, and access to the waterfront. And I think that what we are going to deliver will make a lot of people happy, even if they don't realize it at this point in time.
Okay. So when you say they're happy, that means, like, I know you've been speaking to a couple of groups about free access to the waterfront, and I believe that's been agreed upon, or you've got plans afoot for that.
Yeah, well, I think that in terms of what our obligation is, in terms of development, we have to, and we're glad to, provide open waterfront esplanade to the public, and this is something that we have to maintain, and it's dedicated park space, and for people to walk around and enjoy themselves and sit on benches, and it'll be illuminated, and there'll be plantings there, and it'll be like any other waterfront park around the different parts of New York. And we thought it was important to carry that across underneath the bridge to our second site, even though it's not a requirement.
Okay.
So we're talking about a significant investment in the waterfront, and that'll be 100% accessible to the public. Well, the train tracks are not on our property. They're actually waterbound from our property. But where it gets interesting is that obviously we're in a flood zone, and the rules with respect to development in flood zones require you to make your first residential floor a certain height. Okay. So everything will be built up so that the train will actually be below where the buildings start.
Oh, okay. So even access to the water park will be almost above the train.
Yeah, you won't be able to just go swimming in the water because that's...
I wouldn't recommend it.
Exactly, but you'll be able to walk to the water's edge, and you'll be able to have great views, and there'll be benches for people to sit in, and the train will not interfere with that at all.
Let's put that to pass. You know, you had the party, you had the feedback. You know, what are your feelings about the feedback? And if you could do it again, what would you change? How would you change that?
I think first and foremost, the party was intended not to offend people. Right. It was intended to kind of bring a wide demographic of people to the South Bronx. Right. And you're a resident there, you were invited, and anybody who I would meet on the street or in the restaurant or wherever was gladly invited. And if you weren't invited, it's only because I didn't meet you or didn't know you or nobody requested it. So the idea was just kind of to promote the South Bronx in general, and we weren't selling anything, and what we were really doing is celebrating an old historic building in an old historic area that I think people should know about and see. And it was a great old warehouse, and we wanted to turn it into an amazing one-time art and entertainment venue. And some of the things that were sore spots and complaints, garnered complaints, after the fact, you get it, right. But maybe not before the fact, because you didn't understand that these things could have been insulting to some or many.
Okay.
And once it was pointed out, obviously I could understand their or people's points of view, but there was never an intention to poke fun at anything. Sure. And a lot of the art that was there had nothing to do really with the South Bronx. For instance, the cars that were there were a sculpture that was created by Lucian Smith, who was the artist I think he did that in 2013 for a show in Kansas City, okay. Which was his view on gun violence.
Okay.
So the message wasn't disseminated properly, and for that I take full responsibility. And what happens is, when you try something with good intention and it doesn't work, you keep trying.
Okay.
And that's what we're going to do and continue to do, and try to let people understand that we're not trying to take over anything. We're just trying to respect the community that has been there, the culture that has been there, and just create opportunities for families and people that live there or want to live there. Give you the background about how that name came about and what it was intended to describe. So I've always kind of had a hard time understanding where Mott Haven ended and Port Morris began, and vice versa. And in describing the area where our properties are alongside the 3rd Avenue Bridge, some experts and maps say it's Mott Haven, some say it's Port Morris. So I wanted to come up with an idea that would be descriptive. In doing my research on the historic uses of some of the buildings in the area, in the early 1900s, this area along Bruckner Boulevard was known as the piano manufacturing capital of America, and virtually all the pianos in America were manufactured in these old buildings that are still there. And you see some signs that said piano factory, and the clock tower was once a piano factory, and Beethoven pianos is still there. And it was a historic nod to the neighborhood, and wasn't meant to offend. And I certainly didn't have the desire to rebrand any or all of part of the South Bronx, and certainly did not think that I was trying to force a name on people that didn't want to use that name. And again, it was something that was miscommunicated, and I take responsibility for that. And when the complaint started, and actually the first person to ask me to stop using that name was Ruben Diaz.
Okay.
And I said, yeah, I don't want to offend anybody. I thought it was a historically descriptive name. And fast forward a little bit, we stopped using the name. The billboard came down.
Right.
And the only people that really use that name now are the people that don't like the name.
Right.
You never hear me saying it. And when Swizz and I were discussing, the community perception of his recent event, and he asked me, would I consider changing the name of the district or having the community name the district, my answer was, it's not my district, and I didn't intend to have the area renamed, and we don't have to call it that, especially if people don't like it. So I'm more than happy to scrap that name. And I think that there's some beautiful property all over the Bronx. There's some great industrial property on the other side of the Deegan. There's some beautiful landmark brownstones on the other side of the Deegan. And I think that an integration of the community, including the public housing that's there too.
Right.
You don't have to be afraid to walk by public housing.
I've never had a problem.
And there's a great subway access on 138th Street. And what I'm hoping for is that there's free flow of pedestrian traffic, car traffic, and people coming from all over to go to shops and restaurants and galleries and partake in nightlife, and I think that's a good thing. And I think that in terms of what people are upset about and what they're not upset about. I think there could be a misperception as to the reasons why people are upset,
Sure.
and I hope I could dispel those reasons. And I'm always open for communication, and I think even Swizz and I discussed this, and he said it more than I have, is if there's a willingness to communicate, there's no need to argue or protest,
Yeah.
unless you just want to do that.
So how do you want to, let's say for instance, I mean that's good because I know for a fact that you've had conversations with small local groups and activists in the area. How is that coming along? Are you starting to build bridges? Are you kind of making agreements with people that will kind of help smooth out the process?
I think that when I started this project, I wanted to become a part of it.
Right.
And whatever that means. And I'm still deciding and figuring out what that means. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to just be an absentee developer who came in, built a building, and left. I wanted to understand the people. I wanted to understand the community. I wanted to meet the local government. I wanted to be a consumer of local merchants, and I think I've done that. And I've met with a lot of different local people there, and including yourself.
Right.
And I think that for the most part, everybody is receptive to discussion. Some are not, and I get that. And I respect everybody's position, and I hope that people could respect my position. I'm not trying to do anything. Sure. I'm not trying to do anything other than what we are, which are developers, but I'm trying to be responsible about it, and probably more so than most in my position. The point is that I felt it was important. I felt it was an amazing cause, an amazing opportunity, and it wasn't a Bronx, non-Bronx thing. It was just a culture, music, and art, and all coming together, and I thought it was great. And it would have been a shame not to have it. And I just think that the site there was so perfect for it. It's not about the site. And it was about just people having a good time and being excited by music and art and culture. And that's not to say that the Bronx doesn't have its own music, art, and culture, but that doesn't mean you can't add to it. To include some type of quality market, multiple takeout venues that will have communal seating inside, some sit-down venues that will have great food as well. We're hoping to have a brewery there and a beer garden on the roof, so it's a day-night place. Okay. And we're working with Monroe College, which is a local college, to avail ourselves of their jobs program. So most students in Monroe College are Bronx residents, and I think it's important to give these opportunities for jobs for people that are from the Bronx. And if we could streamline it down to a certain community, I'm not sure that's possible, but I think the jobs opportunity are coming, and wherever we can source local work for us, we will. The other thing that we've all discussed and all read about and all concerned ourselves with is air quality in the neighborhood, and replacing some of the industrial uses with more environmentally friendly uses is also a good thing. They'll accomplish better health concerns and address those. And I think that when you see, for instance, garbage trucks racing down Lincoln Avenue, and actually I was having lunch at Charlie's one day and I saw a garbage truck flip over and crush a parked car right in front of our building. I think that that's something that needs to be addressed. And I think that when we think about environmental conditions, and when I think about sometimes the smell there, it smells the same for me as it does for you, as it does for the next guy. And I think that's something that we certainly can be aligned with in figuring out how to mitigate that existing use so that the community at large would benefit from that. And sometimes it takes private development to come in and make things happen. And people have great ideas, and I think that they need to be implemented. And where I could help implement them, I'm happy to do it.
Busy man. So firstly, thank you for taking this time out.
I appreciate it.
It's good that you want to get your message across. I would like to say, if we can do this again as development moves on, as things move on, if you want to be able to sit down and have another conversation,
I'm always welcome. You're a gentleman, and it's a pleasure to have you and to talk to you, and either on the camera or off the camera.
Great.